Hello and welcome to Uncanny Catholic. My name is Ursula Bielski, and on this show, we look at everything in this world, seen and unseen, from a Catholic perspective. And let me tell you guys, I am so frustrated today. I've been having a bad time with technology lately. Yesterday, I recorded the podcast episode of The Ghost Lorist, and it didn't record. And I also recorded the chapter for my Substack on my UFO book. Didn't record, and thought I fixed it. And today I recorded a wonderful episode for you, very in-depth episode on the topic this week, which is all about the influence of Led Zeppelin on our culture and how a lot of that influence has to do with the occult lifestyle and interests of especially Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. And it was, let me tell you, it was a very interesting episode I recorded for you. It talked all about how Jimmy Page first started playing music, how he first got interested in the occult. It talked all about the esoteric and occult symbols and the mythos that Jimmy Page really created around Led Zeppelin. And it was very purposeful, and talked about a lot of the origins of a lot of the different symbols that they used, the way that they etched messages in the runoff grooves of their records. I talked about the rituals that Page was known to do on stage and the different clothing that he wore on stage. Talked about their lyrics and a lot of the things in their lyrics that were inspired by the occult. But I also talked a lot about the changes that happen in our culture because of Led Zeppelin specifically. And this is not my Christian panic alarm. This is something that's been recognized by a lot of secular and even atheistic historians, social historians, sociologists, psychologists, etc. And I talked all about that in this wonderful talk that I did for you that did not record. I'm so tired. I was awake all night last night. I was supposed to have a meeting at 4:00 this morning with a new member of our missionary team for our missionary in Pakistan. And I was up all night long with a stomach ailment and did not sleep. Had to cancel the meeting and just spent 2 hours recording this wonderful talk for you because I was just determined to get this information to you. But lo and behold, here we are, where I have nothing to give you except to tell you what I wanted to tell you. At any rate, this whole came about because last week my husband said he wanted to see the Led Zeppelin movie that came out last week. This is a documentary. I think it's called Becoming Led Zeppelin or something like that. And huge Led Zeppelin fan, of course. He grew up during the 1970s and 80s. Your typical good old-fashioned American headbanging teenager hitchhiking to big concerts, Rush concerts, Led Zeppelin, The Who. Cheap Trick is another big one he loves. But so I said, yeah, I'll go with you because I want to do an episode about it. And he was like, what do you mean you're going to do an episode about it? Because he knows that, what I do on here. And I was like, oh, yeah, Led Zeppelin, they're really bad. You shouldn't listen to them anymore. And he got really mad, as people often do when you say they should stop listening to Led Zeppelin. And I did talk about that in the episode because I found it very interesting that people that don't get upset about things in general, they get really angry when you threaten to take their Led Zeppelin away. And this is something that I feel it almost seems like from myself being like someone who's been involved in demonology cases over the years, it's evocative of when people have a spiritual situation that they're in and that they actually need deliverance because they're defending something very strongly, like more strongly than seems normal. And you start to wonder if there's something a little off spiritually that's causing them to so violently defend this thing. That's really, for a Christian, not very defensible. Because I talk not only about the cult involvement of Led Zeppelin, but the lifestyle and the glorification of hedonism, which is what Aleister Crowley did, who was such an influence on Jimmy Page. And that in the lifestyle of Led Zeppelin, the hypersexuality, the massive excess, just for excess sake, that hedonism And now that comes out in the lyrics, comes out in the music. And I talk about in this article I wrote that there's a the direct influence of Led Zeppelin in the creation of the hip hop culture. And you see it in the lyrics, in the lifestyle of the hip hop culture. And I very specifically compare and contrast Led Zeppelin with a lot of the earlier, the kind of contemporary rock bands like the Doors and the Rolling Stones that people say like, oh, they were just as bad. They were not just as bad. They were very different from, or Led Zeppelin was very different from them. And Led Zeppelin was also very different from the countercultural scene up until their time, like the beatniks and the hippie movement and all of that was very different than what Led Zeppelin was. But anyway, I had a gold mine in there for you. And I wanted to talk to you about it, but I'm really distraught. I've gotta figure this out. I think it's because my computer's out of memory. I really need a new computer, but I can't afford that right now. So I'm gonna have to figure out just how to clean off my computer to the point where I can do recordings without worrying they're not going to actually happen. But I do have for you something else. I did record the Ghost Lorist episode about the Curse of Led Zeppelin, the Devil and Jimmy Page. It's called Stairway to Hell, and it is on the Ghost Lorist podcast this week. So I'll put a link to that below. What I talked about today in my Lost episode was all about the occult and Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin, and also a little bit of the other cultural things, but it was mostly about the occult. But I wrote over the last week a very long article that's going to be part of the book that I'm working on called All of Them Witches, which is about the occult influence on Western culture from the Renaissance till today through politics and music, art, literature, and other channels. And the article is like 12,000 words long. It's huge. And I put it on, it's a work in progress, so it's not done. I keep finding other things. It's really amazing the influence that Led Zeppelin has had on our culture. It's truly amazing. For example, did you know that Led Zeppelin is the most sampled band or musician in the hip hop culture? So in hip hop music, no one has been more sampled with their music used in the music of hip hop than Led Zeppelin. And that's just one aspect of it. But at any rate, I have that article, the whole article on my Substack. If you're not familiar with Substack, it's a platform where writers can just write and share their writing with followers. And most of my stuff is free. I do have some audio that I'm doing right now. I'm sharing chapters each week of my Devil in Dreamland book. It's free to read. And you can also, for $6 a month, you can get the audio versions. I don't have one this week because the recording didn't work, but I will have that up this weekend and a new one next week. But I encourage you to go over to Substack, and I'll put the link below and read that article, especially read like the first half of the article that talks about Jimmy Page and the occult. It's in itself is very long, but it goes greatly into depth about the influences on Jimmy Page and how he deliberately worked those influences and Aleister Crowley's philosophy, his religion, into the work of Led Zeppelin and the persona and lifestyle of Led Zeppelin. I think when you read it, you won't be able to unsee it as you go forward and listen to Led Zeppelin in the future if you choose to do that. Yeah, please go and check out that article. And maybe in the future, if I can get this stuff to work, I will eventually do that episode on Led Zeppelin and the occult, maybe even next week. But I do have other stuff I want to talk about next week. But anyway, I thank you for being here. I'm sorry this is so short. I could record this on something else today, but I'm so tired and beat from being awake all night and being sick last night. And I got to keep to this kind of schedule to make sure everything has to be out on time and all of that. I do hope you'll check out the article. I do hope you'll listen to the Ghost Lorist podcast. And I do hope you'll come back here next week for a real episode of Uncanny Catholic after I get this stuff worked out. I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope to see you here next time. And until then, I hope that you remember to pray for ghosts and also say a little prayer for Pope Francis, who seems to have rallied again, but we really need him to do some soul searching before he pays his final farewell. I think we need to say a lot of prayers. Thanks for being here again. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.